my audience for my analysis speech. I have two people. For my speech, I decided to choose the speech over the aftermath of 9/11. This horrific event happened during George W. Bush's presidency term. During my speech, I will inform you on how one act of terrorism made the United States of America stronger. George W. Bush showed courage as he had to speak on national TV to millions of people who were experiencing fear and tragedy. Although George W. Bush held one of the most important positions in the world, he was just a normal human being, just like the rest of us. George W. Bush was born on July 6, 1946 in New Haven, Connecticut. Bush was the oldest child of all 6 of his siblings. Eventually, as time passed, George and his family moved to Midland, Texas. While in Texas, George Jr., aka George W. Bush, would live there a few short years before moving to Houston, Texas. He would then finish out his junior high and high school years until heading off to college. George W. Bush would then go off to Yale University to follow his father and grandfather's footsteps. However, while attending this Ivy League, George was more worried about his social appearance than grades. He was the president of his fraternity house and played rugby. While still attending Yale University, Bush had enrolled into the Texas Air National Guard in 1968. He felt that he had one duty to help out our country and had succeeded. After fulfilling one of many of his dreams, he was going on to the next one. He went to Harvard Business School and graduated with his master's degree. That's insane. Once Bush graduated, he moved back to Midland where he would meet his wife, Laura Welch. According to biography.com over George Bush, Laura had changed his life. He had experienced multiple issues with alcohol. Without Laura, Bush would have not found himself and not dedicated his life to God and church. A few years had passed and George and Laura welcomed their 2 beautiful twin daughters, Barbara and Jenna. Once having his daughters, he had moved his family to Washington, D.C., where he would help his dad finish out his presidency election. After his dad's victory, Bush Jr. would return back to Texas, where he would be named the governor of Texas, the great state. This is where his political career began. I feel like George Bush was moving around like a freaking hot potato. George W. Bush would then discover that he had stood behind the Republican Party, where he would share the same political views, as well as his father did. Nevertheless, George W. Bush Jr. looked up to his father and wanted to follow in his footsteps. Once George W. Bush's father's presidency term was over, Bush Jr. would begin his race for the 2000 election. In summary, the election was quite a close call. Just a little bit, you know. George had faced Democrat Al Gore. Al Gore had won popular vote, yet that wasn't enough because George W. Bush had won the Electoral College vote by just a few votes. Thus, that led another Bush running in the White House. Shortly after Bush got elected, a horrific event had occurred. An event that had changed America forever. On September 11, 2001, America had been attacked. An Islamic group, Al-Qaeda, had hijacked 4 American airplanes. 2 of the 4 planes went into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. The 3rd plane had crashed into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And lastly, the 4th plane's destination was not reached due to the brave citizens who had attempted to attack the hijackers, which led the plane to crash into a field in Pennsylvania. The first 2 planes that startled everyone was the Twin Towers. at 8:45 a.m. on September 11th, America would change forever. That was just the beginning of the war. At that time, the first plane to show threat had crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Thus, had not only killed 1,000 of people inside the building, but killed those who were inside the plane, and people jumped to their death that were trapped on the above floors that the plane had crashed into. While the South Tower was getting news of it, they were evacuating, and the second plane had hit. Not short after, at 10:30 a.m., both of the towers had collapsed, killing firefighters, business workers, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, loved ones, spouses. It's just sad. An hour later, from when the plane struck into the towers, the third plane had crashed into the west side of the Pentagon, killing 189 people. Moreover, the fourth plane had crashed into the ground to the brave civilians attacking the hijackers, but no one knew where the plane was going to attack, according to thehistory.com over September 11th. Due to these events taking place, George W. Bush spoke to the people of the United States on the night of September 11th. George W. Bush had showed bravery as he had to deliver a speech on NBC News explaining what had happened to America. Bush had commented, "Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America." This meaning, you can shake, frighten, and try to destroy us, but I promise we will come back stronger, and you did not take away our freedom. Bush had also addressed that he had a plan to reconstruct our nation and protect the country from terrorists. He will seek justice in which we will find those who are responsible for testing our Constitution. Most importantly, he brought people together, those who had different political views, whether you're Democrat, Republican, cultures, religion, and ethnicities. Bush had sent his condolences to those who had lost a loved one and thanked those who had fought for our country and helped one another to survive. Even though 9/11 was more significant than the speech, George W. Bush's speech had touched the hearts of people. This speech had bettered the nation by bringing people together. Those who had lost loved ones and those who were victims of the tragic event knew that they had people standing behind them. Our nation was very thankful for President Bush for being such a courageous person and change our nation for the better. Our present world would be different, and if we did not have a strong and brave president express his condolences and his acts of reconstruction of this country after 9/11. And here's my audience again.